Next up, she is the only lady, other than myself, that bedazzles her diva cup. You all know her and love her from all of her extensive emails every day, 24 hours a day. Maybe 14 times a day. If I try and search her name for a specific email having to do with the show, it's impossible because she sent every single email that I got from CCA this year. Please welcome to the stage, Melissa Miller.
I guess I also need to give a public apology. I have two options. I'd like to give it up to you guys as a vote, maybe vocal vote. Would you rather hear some jokes, or would you rather hear an embarrassing story?
Embarrassing jokes! The only way we can decipher this is when I say jokes, give a round of applause. If I say thank you, if I say, what was the other option?
Embarrassing story.
Oh, embarrassing, that's good. Okay, if you want to hear an embarrassing story, give a round of applause. If you want to hear Melissa do some jokes, give a round of applause. I think embarrassing story won.
I'll tell one joke and then do an embarrassing story.
That's a great compromise.
What's long and hard and has cum in it?
Oh, no.
It's a cucumber. What's the difference between hungry and horny? Where you put the cucumber. Sorry. Okay. So I'm going to read this story. Ready? I convinced myself that I loved Hunter because he was my perfect artist counterpart. I believed that we both wanted to live an artist lifestyle, maybe in a huge open loft with lots of natural light. Mostly starving and barely getting by, we'd be happy because we'd have our art and each other. I was inspired by Patti Smith and Robert Mapplethorpe's relationship, as she recalls it in Just Kids, except Hunter wasn't gay in the end. We had agreed to exchange books. I would lend him my most precious possession, Just Kids, and in return he'd offered me the autobiography of Peggy Guggenheim. I wanted him to read it so bad. I knew if he did, he would want the same things I wanted. I couldn't wait for him to find time in his busy schedule to meet up with me, so I resolved to mail the book to him instead, loving the romantic notion of snail mail. A few days later, when I hadn't heard from Hunter, I was starting to go crazy, wondering what he had thought of my bold actions. Would he admire my courage? I wanted to do something dramatic. This is what played out in my mind. I'd be wearing a lightweight coral sundress, riding a Greyhound bus to him. Raindrops rolling down the window as I gazed dreamily at the passing miles of highway. I'd march to his door, soaking. I'd turn back once, doubting myself, but then return to his door and firmly press the bell. I'd be standing there when he came to the front door. He'd pause in surprise behind the screen. Then he'd slowly swing it open, not sure what to say. I'd look at him between soaking locks of hair. My waterproof mascara would have remained intact. Hunter, I would start the speech I'd been rehearsing over in my head. We belong together, I'd tell him. He'd wrap his arms around my waist, lifting me off the ground, kissing me. My left knee would kick up and my head would fall back. It would be the start of our life inseparable together. This is what actually happened. It was raining. No one really wanted to go out to the bars, but Betsy and I met up with Donnie and his friend Mike Brown at Bender's. I wanted to be a hard ass, so I ordered Jameson PBR. I could feel it after the first shot and beer combo, but I kept going. The more I got, the more I talked about Hunter, Patty Smith, and the life I wanted us to have together. I wanted to go to our favorite spot, Beauty Bar, and I kept drinking the hip combo there. I gave Betsy my phone to prevent myself from contacting Hunter. Later, we decided to skip over to another spot. Before leaving, I went to the bathroom, and when I came out, I didn't see Betsy or Donnie anywhere in the seemingly empty bar, so I walked outside hoping to catch up with them. I strolled through the rain, my vision blurry from the combination of water droplets and alcohol. I yelled out, "Betsy!" and walked 3 blocks to the cross street the next bar was on. As I looked around for my long-lost friends, the Muni 14 came out of the haze like a white and red dragon. Without a second thought, I pressed my Clipper card to the scanner and boarded the coach. Without a phone, jacket, or my inhibitions, I rode that bus 20 blocks to Hunter's apartment. I sat in a drunken stupor, grinning wildly to myself. When we arrived at a stop, I stumbled out the back door and took off down the block until I realized I had walked the wrong way. Oh well, I thought to myself, I want to be soaking wet when I'm in front of his door, and right now it's only misting slightly. I walked to this old Victorian. When I arrived, I remembered that they didn't have a buzzer and I didn't have a phone. Seeing the front light on, I yelled to his roommate, "Hey, Nick!" A few moments later, Nick peered from the window, obviously confused and leery about my being there at midnight uninvited. He came down and let me in. I marched myself up to their apartment, making small chat. In their hallway, Hunter emerged from his bedroom in sweats and a t-shirt. He was on the phone with Betsy, confirming that I was in fact at their house. "Hey, Mel," he greeted me with confusion. "Oh, hey, Hunter," I responded with casual coolity. 3 of us sat on their couch watching an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, not saying anything. I waited there for Betsy to come. When she got there, I ran down to let her in, but Hunter met me at the gate with my coat and purse before we could re-enter their apartment. I felt his disappointment as he handed my items over and told us goodnight. I cried in between his neighbors' garages and made Betsy call and ask him what I hadn't had the courage to. Had he gotten the poem and copy of Just Kids I'd put in the mail for him a few days before? After feeding me a few sips of Four Loko, Betsy and Donnie escorted me back to the bus stop. Humiliated and devastated, I was ready to go home. When we got to our stop, I stood up, waiting for the other 2 to follow me. I told them, "I have to get off this bus." "Oops, the bus is moving again," joked Betsy. Suddenly, we were right outside Beauty Bar for the second time that night, and about 10 minutes later, I tasted my Jameson PBRs for the second time that night. The next day, Betsy went to work with vomit in her hair, and I got an email from Hunter. On Friday, January 20th, 2012, at 6:58 p.m., Hunter wrote, "Hello, Melissa. I got your book in the mail today. Thank you. I would have liked to trade regular, but... ... I found it a little creepy that you knew our address and the letter that you sent with the book, not to mention showing up with no call, etc. at midnight, even if you were drunk. I can see that you were inspired by Patty Smith, and that is great, but I do not think what you feel toward me is love. This is not what friends do and say to each other. Hunter."
Give it up for Melissa, everybody.